Winding down of the year.
Oh, man.
Either that or we don't have anything exciting on our agenda.
Don't speak
right.
just yet.
All right, Kyle, you may begin whenever you would like.
All right, thank you. All right, welcome everybody to the April 20th, 2022 meeting of the CB6 Executive Committee. My name is Kyle Athaide and I am the chair of CB6. This meeting is being called to order at 6:32 p.m. and tonight we're joined by District Manager Jesus Perez. Tonight's minutes will be taken by the CB6 office. We will now take attendance by roll call. Jesus will conduct the roll call. Please answer present when your name is called.
All right, can everyone hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yes, sir.
All right, I think I was having some microphone issues for like a long time and no one said anything. So I think we resolved those. So if you're hearing me clearly now, that's why. All right, let us begin. Kyle Athaide.
Present.
Thank you. Elvie Barroso. Remember, I can't see you guys right now, so if you're here, please answer. Elvie Barroso. All right, I don't hear anything. Matt Bondi. Once again, Matt Bondi.
Not here, not here.
Claire Brennan.
I am here.
Thank you. John Keller.
Here.
Thank you. Sandy McKee.
Here.
McKee.
I'm
you.
here.
Thank you, Sandy. Rich Mintz.
I'm here.
Thank you. Kevin O'Keefe.
Present.
Thank you. Reshma Patel.
Present.
Thank you. Matt Roberts.
Present.
Thank you. Was that a present I heard?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, I'm here.
Jean Santoro is not able to join us tonight. Sandro Sherrod.
Presente.
Thank you. Mark Thompson, not Matt
Yeah,
Thompson.
my brother isn't here, but I am, yeah.
At least I didn't say Kathy Thompson.
She'll be here soon.
Yeah. Brian Van Nieuwenhoven.
Present.
Thank you. With 11 out of 14 members present, we do have a quorum.
All right, thank you so much, Jesus. The agenda for tonight's meeting appears on the screen before you. If there is no objection, we will adopt the agenda as stated. So members of the executive committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, please raise your hand through Zoom. Seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. The minutes from the March 16th meeting were distributed to the executive committee ahead of time by the board office. If there is no objection, we will adopt these minutes as drafted. So committee members, if you object to adopting the minutes, please raise your hand through Zoom. Seeing no objections, the minutes from the March 16th meeting are adopted. So as we proceed with the business of the committee, in order to conduct an efficient meeting, let's observe a few ground rules. First, no one may speak until granted the floor. Committee members, if you have a question about committee business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom first. As a reminder, the chat function should not be used for committee business or questions about agenda topics. Any and all such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you are having or to state in writing information such as an email address or link that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. When a committee member is given the floor to speak, I will first identify you, and then you can unmute yourself so that you can speak. And last but not least, we are required by New York State law to have a transcript of this meeting, so please keep all questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. So I will now deliver my chair's report. And I will spend this time discussing the perpetual thorn in our side, which is the open meetings law. And I'll give you a quick update on that. And we do have some business to discuss and some next steps to take. So as a reminder, at our last executive committee meeting, we voted unanimously to continue going virtual up until August, at which point we would then reevaluate how we're working and how this is working, not just for the board, but also for the public as well. So we had taken a vote on it. It passed unanimously that we would continue on that. Of course, right before the meeting was when a state of emergency was extended. So which of course complicated things, which also kicked the can down the road. As we heard at our last full board meeting, the state budget that was approved also included provisions about proceeding with virtual meetings. So for the next 60 days, or from 60 days from that time, from the period that it was approved, we're allowed to continue to hold the meetings virtually, which means that that actually continues up until our last full board meeting of the year, which is on June 8th. So we're still able to conduct virtual meetings up until that point. So in effect, this sort of creates a weird position for us in that, do we want to continue to protest this going forward when we are sort of pausing over the summer anyway until the fall? One of the provisions that we have to take, I guess one of the procedural things we have to do is to actually ratify the hybrid meeting sort of proposal that the governor approved through a public hearing and then the passing of a resolution which states as such. So Jesus and I drafted a resolution, and if you could pull that up, Jesus, that'd be much appreciated. And what I would like for us to do right now is actually just go through it. The idea is if there are any edits we want to make at this point, we can make them. I've decided that we should hold a public hearing at our next executive committee meeting, which is in May, since we won't have much to talk about anyway, since many June meetings either don't take place or are very light on the agendas. Anything more specific, if you are holding a meeting, we can deal with offline. But we'll use that time as a public hearing to pass this resolution. That will then go to the full board on June 8th, which again can still be conducted virtually. And after that point, I can continue the advocacy that I'm working on with the borough president and our electeds on making sure that this actually changes to something that's more appropriate and reflective of the needs of our board and the community. And as a reminder, in the survey that we took of our board members, which was shared at the last executive committee meeting and full board, over 80% of our board would be happy to continue meeting virtually because of the flexibility it allows, and also the new sort of responsibilities and commitments we have in a post-pandemic world, which don't always allow us to meet in person at random locations throughout the district. So that's sort of the meaning behind it. And later on, we'll actually hear a little bit more about the public survey that we have been conducting as well. And Jesus can share that during his report or during this conversation. So let's just go through this. I don't know if anyone will have any questions or comments on it. Of course, we'll send this out after as well, because no vote needs to be taken on this right now. We will wait till the public hearing next month. But essentially, I'll just go through this. Whereas on April 9th, 2022, Governor Hochul signed Chapter 56 of the laws of 2022 relating to the New York State budget for the 22-23 state fiscal year, and included in the bill was language amending the open meetings law to allow for the expanded use of video conferencing by public bodies to conduct open meetings under extraordinary circumstances until July 1st, 2024. Whereas the April 9th, 2022 amendments to the open meetings law do not actually change any of the pre-pandemic requirements of the law. Simply put, if a community board reverted to the pre-March 2020 practice of holding all meetings in person with no video conferencing option at all, then it would be in compliance with the open meetings law, even with the aforementioned amendments. Whereas the amendments require public bodies to establish written procedures governing member and public attendance consistent and to conspicuously post such written procedures on our website. Whereas, therefore be it resolved that Manhattan Community Board 6 may, at the board's chair's discretion, use video conferencing to conduct its meetings pursuant to the requirements of the open meetings law. Be it further resolved, the Manhattan Community Board 6 establishes the open meetings law as our procedures for member and public attendance for meetings. Be it further resolved, the Manhattan Community Board 6 highlights for special attention the following procedures for member and public attendance as they differ from previous implementations of the open meetings law. First, absent a declaration of emergency by the state of New York, all meetings are required a quorum at a physical location that is open to the public. 2, any member that participates in a CB6 meeting via video conference and whose location is not properly announced, public viewing site cannot count towards quorum. Such a member, however, can participate and vote in the meeting if there is otherwise a quorum at a physical location that is open to the public. Except in the case of executive sessions conducted pursuant to the open meetings law, CB6 shall ensure that members can be heard, seen, and identified from when the meeting is called to order until it is adjourned. That means that any person that utilizes video conferencing to participate in a meeting in their capacity as a voting member in that meeting must have their camera turned on and their name displayed at all times. While a digital background is permissible, no static photos or blank screens are permitted in place of a live video feed or of the member. This also precludes members from participating in CB6 meetings by phone. B, any person that participates in a meeting in person and in their capacity as a voting member in that meeting must properly be identified whenever they speak and must be able to be heard. The minutes of any meeting must indicate which members attended via video conferencing. And 5, if video conferencing is used to conduct a meeting, and assuming the meeting includes an opportunity for members of the public attending in person to make comments, ask questions, or otherwise participate in the meeting, the same opportunity to participate in real time shall be ensured for members of the public who are attending the meeting remotely. So be it further resolved, so on and so forth. So this is reflective of the changes that were described in the open meetings law. I don't know if anyone had a chance to check that out. So this is all reflective of that same language. So if anybody is confused by it, you're not alone. So I'll open it up for any questions, comments, edits to this, or any thoughts. Again, this is a working draft. I wanted to present you with a framework, and we can then send this out to the executive committee after this as well, in case you have further comments. But I see a hand from Rich.
Yes, just for clarification, under this new way of doing things, we will be required to have quorum in person somewhere in order for the meeting to be legitimate.
Correct.
Which means we will need to carefully arrange in advance who the people are who are going to count toward quorum, rather than simply assuming enough people show up.
Exactly. Right. So
Okay.
that's part of the logistics of this as well, is that if our board had responded differently to, oh, we all want to show up in person, that wouldn't be necessary. The survey did show that about 80%, again, over 80%, want to meet virtually. So nothing is guaranteed in person. So yeah, we would have to make sure that there are enough people in person. And that's also a really great point that you make, Rich, because what some people might not understand is that the hybrid model might not be hybrid for board members. It is definitely hybrid for the public who do not have to attend in person, but we still need to have enough of a quorum in person to conduct the meeting. And if we do have a quorum in person, then some committee members can actually attend virtually and participate in that way. But as we've seen, attendance is sometimes iffy with members. We're not always, sure who's going to show up, even if they do confirm that they're going to meet in person. So this does provide those logistical challenges as well. This was all part of why initially we had voted, when there was no sort of long-term answer to this, why we were essentially protesting this and saying we were going to continue virtually until at least August, since there are those challenges and it doesn't really take into consideration any of that.
I find it challenging. I'm sorry. I see hands up. I didn't realize.
Do you want to raise your hand and I'll call on you? Or
Yep.
You defer. All right. Sandra, go ahead.
The floor.
Yep.
Well, so Sandra was first, I think. Yeah.
Sandy, go ahead.
I defer to Sandra.
All right.
No,
Sandra.
so sorry. I really did not mean to cut you off. I'm just thinking the logistics though of if we have to have an in-person meeting, yet it's a hybrid meeting and those that are not attending in person don't count towards quorum, it's just very problematic for the voting, as well as I would imagine, I know that we polled the membership, but given that we would have to have a majority in person. I mean, I don't know if that was actually what was, I don't think it was what was polled, and I don't think that was what people had in their minds when they responded to the poll earlier in the year.
The requirements that are in the open meetings law now were not known to us at the time.
Right. But I'm just saying, like, I wonder if we were to repoll the membership, if that would significantly change the response, because there's a completely different framework, I think, in no camera has to be on. You have to be present to be counted towards quorum. I mean, obviously, if we have 25 members who want to join remotely, we're going to have a problem.
Right. And that's the issue. I mean, and that's also partly part of the conversation as well, which is that people want to meet virtually. And again, this is not a virtual option for members. This is still an in-person requirement. So very similar to before, we're going to have to determine space, assuming that everybody would attend and that everyone in the public would attend, because we need to have the capacity in case that does happen. And then, how do we go through a procedure where we determine who needs to show up in person and who doesn't need to show up in person? Because as we know, everybody has, something going on at any given point. So that does present it. What we're looking at right now is a ratification of what the governor passed in the budget, what the state legislature passed in the budget. This is essentially procedural in that we are not able to proceed with this virtual option if we do not pass a resolution on this, just to clarify. So if we do not put any resolution on this, we are subject to the same requirements that we had before the pandemic, meaning we have to meet in person. If we pass this provides an option for a hybrid meeting for the next 2 years. So this is in some ways procedural in ratifying what the governor has said. This is what the Open Meetings Committee has told our office as well, that we need to ratify in order to have this option going forward. So just because we pass this doesn't mean that we are continuing. It just gives us that ability to do so. And Sandra, go ahead if you have a follow-up.
Sandy?
Oh, do you have okay.
I was just going to say, basically, somewhat similar to what Sandro said, is that we don't actually follow those rules now. People don't have to be on camera. People don't, they're not necessarily participating for the entire meeting. So that's different. That is quite different than the way we are working currently. And in that sense, I mean, I actually, in the survey said I don't mind coming to a real meeting, but I think if people have to follow those restrictions, it's a completely different issue. And maybe we need to repoll again.
Yeah, no, I mean, so we're talking about two different things now. Again, I want to make that distinction. This is not based on the survey at all. I'm just bringing up the concerns based on the survey, right? So this particular draft of the resolution is based completely on what was passed in the budget. This has nothing to do with our survey or anything of that nature. So none of this is subject to that.
No, but we're trying to find what works for our board. So I guess
exactly.
we just be great to know that,
and we haven't, right.
Have those restrictions.
And we haven't determined that yet, right? Because we're going to continue, because the last meeting we had, there was no long-term solution to this. After that executive committee where we took that vote, and after the results of that survey is when the budget was passed and this particular plan was put out. So right now, this particular plan is the only thing that's available and is what is technically legal. Again, this is a procedural thing in that we have to pass this if we would like to have any of these options of video conferencing. Otherwise, we're completely subject to the pre-pandemic rules, which are we have to always meet in person, even the members of the public, and there is no video conferencing at all. So this is a procedural thing on this. And a separate conversation, which I agree with, is that we need to reevaluate again, based on what was put out on this, how we want to continue to advocate going forward about, hybrid meetings and virtual options and things like that. And Sandra?
Yeah. So one, I'm trying to think how this would work, if we were to do this and the majority of people did not want to show up in person, how we would conduct business. I think this could hamper the way we do business, but this is also kind of an onerous set of rules that actually were poorly written. That this doesn't even make sense. If we were meeting in person, we would not be required to be in the room at all times. We can go to the bathroom. We don't even require in the city you to be there for the whole meeting, right? And there's no requirement that you have to be there for the whole meeting to vote. In our board, we have had the 2 roll call rule to try to encourage participation because we don't want absentee members. But this is basically saying you can come in person, check in, vote, and leave. But if you're at home, you're not allowed to go to the bathroom, for the duration of the meeting. It's kind of bizarre. And I really don't understand. I understand that the intent of trying to keep people engaged, but this seems a little draconian.
I agree. Again, this is the state wording. So again, this is the idea of
Right.
This is not us advocating for these changes. This is us ratifying the state language and giving us the option of going forward. If we don't do it, then we don't have any of these options. We go completely back to normal after June 8th, which is completely in person with no Zoom or anything like that. And Jesus, do you have something to add to that?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, a very, very strict reading of it is that, yes, if you're on Zoom, you are glued to that seat until the meeting adjourns.
Or you take the camera phone to the bathroom. Because that it basically says at all times, right? I
think what, and again, some of the Coog has delivered some guidance, some further interpretation, and it was not as clear as I was hoping. So since this resolution is still a working draft and you guys are not going to vote on it tonight, because you can vote on it at next month's exec, I'm going to try and refine some of this and try and get clearer answers from Coog, because my impression is what they mean is that if you need to go to the restroom and you're on Zoom, you leave that camera on and people will see that you are not there, and then you come back and then you're there. My guess is, again, we had no input in this. We were asking our state electeds, and they seem to suggest that, there's most likely nothing going to be in the budget about the open meetings law. And then all of a sudden, all this stuff is there, which makes me, I don't think they were deceiving us, but, who had a hand in this that even our elected officials didn't really know this was coming. My guess is that we have had, there have been some concerns that if people are on Zoom and their cameras are always off, that they can, for all we know, go off, do whatever they want and not listen, not participate, not be informed. And how would we know different? So this perhaps is some sort of attempt at trying to remedy that. But yeah, I mean, what is in this reso, as Kyle said, is what we could glean from what is in the law. And we specifically wrote out, because we could have easily just said, look, our procedures are going to be whatever's written in the open meetings law, and that's that. But there was some different stuff in there, and we did not want that to go unnoticed, since most likely lots of people are not going to go and start reading the open meetings law. So we wanted to highlight these weirder, newer things so that people couldn't say, oh, I never knew this. So that's where that came from.
Yeah. And again, just as a reminder for the context of the framework for this conversation, we are not advocating for these changes. This is a ratification of these changes. So if we refuse to do it, which is totally fine, that's up to the committee's vote at next month's hearing. We just go back to what it was before, which is completely in person. If we do it, then we follow these weird rules as much as they are. A separate conversation, another resolution that, again, we can discuss, which we have discussed at the Budget and Governmental Affairs meeting, is what virtual should look like. And that's, taking place in that committee as well. And I will say that the borough president and Senator Holman, who have been real leaders on this, were very disappointed with what was put on the open meetings law. They've expressed that in many different ways and are continuing to work on that as well. So again, this particular resolution, because I know we all have ideas about what it should be. I just want to make sure that we are clear that this is a ratification and not an advocacy of changes. So that would be a separate resolution. John?
I think Rich had his hand up before me, Rich.
I'm calling on you, John, though, because Rich already spoke. So if you have.
Okay, thank you. All right, just want to be polite. I just a comment really, which is that as I was reading and listening to the reso there, it dawned on me that I think of our meetings now as virtual meetings, and this is a dramatic. It's been 2 years, right? Plus or minus, right? That we've been doing this. And this is a big switch. And I just wanted to thank you and Jesus for putting this together so clearly. I need to really think about it. And it certainly puts a lot of onus on the committee chairs because it's hard to ask people to help you form a quorum if you're not going to be there yourself, whatever the circumstances. So there are many things to reflect upon in this, and I thank you for enabling us to do that.
Yeah, of course.
I'm not trying to solve anything. I'm just saying, yeah.
I think we're all doing that. Jesus, you have a follow-up?
Yeah, one thing that may still need to be added to that reso is in the law, it says that there are, in the law, it says that you should assume that your default position is in person, attending in person. If, however, there are extraordinary circumstances, and it does leave a lot of leeway there, then okay, you can Zoom from home, but only, of course, if there's that in-person quorum already. You know, I can envision, at least judging by the poll that we already took of the members, that some people that have serious concerns with, you know, health concerns or mobility issues, which could easily be, you know, a circumstance that's worthy of being at home on Zoom. And the way the law is written, could that even qualify as an extraordinary circumstance? Because, you know, if you have mobility issues and they're permanent, it's like, can it really be extraordinary, for example, if you have them every single month and that's your justification for staying home on Zoom? The guidance that Coon has so far delivered did not speak to that. And, you know, it's the wording, I guess I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that they tried their best. But the wording is tricky at some points and leaves a lot to yet be determined.
Thank you. Kevin?
Yeah, I was wondering if there's any guidelines on the mandatory in-person attendance of a committee chair or vice chair. Can they stay home or do they have to be in person?
The law is silent on that score. So long as a quorum exists, it does not require the chair to necessarily be there.
And that's also part of the awkwardness, because John just gave an example. If the chair is unable to make it, how do you chair virtually while the rest of your committee is there in person?
The law says any member, unless you have a real good reason, should stay home. Should be in person.
Yeah. Sandra, go ahead.
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously, you know, this is something we're all going to ponder a little bit more on. But I mean, ultimately, I imagine we're going to, of course, issue a resolution that says we are going to follow the law. But I think we better add some very strongly worded resolves that say that we think it's terrible and it's poorly done, and for all the great reasons that have been mentioned by the members tonight.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Are there any other questions or comments on that? So again, just to give you an overview of the procedure, we are required to hold a public hearing on this particular topic. Looking at the schedule, it made the most sense to do it in lieu of our next executive committee meeting, so that we could then get it into the June full board, which again is virtual. So that's actually the last day for the 60-day window that we're allowed to meet virtually. And we're actually not really impacted after that point. I know a lot of other community boards have a lot of meetings even through the summer. We obviously take our break. So it doesn't impact us too much. But at that point, then a full board vote on it would either pass it or negate the resolution that we have discussed at the hearing. So, John, yeah, you have a question?
Excuse me, just when you said that, but the exec does meet in the summer, so therefore presumably we need a quorum.
Or I could cancel it as I did last year. Because
I'm not trying to create problems.
Yeah. Claire?
Similarly, business affairs meets in the summer. So we would just have to think that through also.
Exactly.
So just to be clear, as far as the process for May 18th exec, I think it should still be an exec because it could be that we advertise this thing and then no one shows up. I mean, we've polled them and we don't want to, maybe people have felt, okay, I've had my say, and they don't want to deal with it anymore. So that could be, so we don't necessarily, if that happens and no or very few people show up, unless you're prepared to just adjourn the meeting after a few minutes, you may still want to do some exec-like stuff. So it might be good to maybe plan for there to be a short hearing, but if there is a lengthier hearing, then the fluff in the reports can be cut, and then an exec-like meeting can still happen after the hearing, perhaps, which should be first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
what you and I talk about that offline to hammer out some of the details.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. My tentative idea is to hold the hearing towards the front of it. If there are any executive committee things that you need to deal with, please do, like, for example, agendas. Please submit that ahead of time so that we don't have to necessarily discuss that during the meeting. So any pending things that you need to report back to the board office, whether it's speakers, connections, agenda items, whatever it might be, please get that done in advance so that we can spend more time on open meetings at the next executive committee meeting in case it does get to be a big one. Otherwise, if it's not, then it's a very short meeting, which I'm sure people will enjoy in May. So please do that ahead of time. So any agenda items, any agenda creations, please do submit that, maybe a week or two before that, so we don't have to deal with it in the meeting for everybody's sake. Okay. So I'm concluding my chair's report with that, and I'll turn it over to District Manager Jesus Perez.
Thank you, Kyle. Okay, so for my report, I thought it might be good to give you guys an update on how the survey of the general public went. Let me actually, one second. The results, we'll write up the results for the newsletter, but I thought you might want to preview because we already have closed the survey. Give me one second. All right, so this survey was different from the one that the members took because obviously it was geared towards geared towards the public. I did see that 2 or 3 members did get in, but they're residents of the district too. So, but the overwhelming majority are people that are just residents, not on the board, and 95% of these folks are actually people that live in the district. The other 5 are just people that have interest in CB6 meetings for other reasons, but don't live in our district. And the long and short of it was people like Zoom. They like the ability to meet online. They like all the benefits that it has to offer. We started this survey because we thought Omicron was on the wane, and we thought that things were going to be, clearing up a little bit. Obviously, cases have been ticking up again. So who knows if we did this survey maybe in June or July, whether it would come out different. But as far as the question of whether the people feel safe attending CB6 meetings right now, I mean, keep in mind this was done from the beginning of April to today. 57% said no, 43% said yes. That is a little bit more pronounced than what the board members said, but it's more, by and large, in line with how board members felt. As far as format of our meetings, 68%, this big blue, people say that we should just be on Zoom and that should be it for, forever. And as far as those that didn't really feel strongly either way, 19% of folks felt that way. And as far as the people that wanted to be back in person, only in person, that's the only way we should do meetings, 13% of respondents felt that way. So, if you take this and the people who don't really care either way, that's 87% of respondents who would be just fine if we met on Zoom forever and ever. As far as, I haven't gotten to that one yet, but as far as the elements of the meetings, this is a different question that we didn't have on the member survey. And we wanted to really see what about the various, the two main types of meetings people really liked. And so we polled them on two benefits of meeting remotely and two benefits of meeting in person. The benefits of meeting remotely were what everyone mentions, is that it's very convenient to meet on Zoom, whether it's just because I don't have to go out anywhere and I can just be at home in my pajamas, or whether they have much more compelling reasons, like I have childcare or other caregiving responsibilities, I have mobility issues, I have any number of things. I've heard something I heard a few times that, as I'm not myself an older person, but that some older people don't like going out at night when many of our meetings are happening. So any number of reasons that kind of goes into the convenience of remote meetings. Additionally, the YouTube aspect. When you ask people what they like about remote meetings, they don't normally say, oh, the YouTube aspect, but it gets used a lot. It's very handy. And though people don't mention it, we do see people using it. So we used those two elements of meeting online to poll people on. As far as the meeting in person, we went with the thing that everyone seems to mention, is that there's something that's lost, this personal touch that you lose if you don't meet in person. And so that was the thing that we polled on, as well as we wanted to find another practical one to kind of go along with the whole YouTube thing for the other side. And we came up with fiddling with Zoom controls, because sometimes that can be annoying to people. And the way it shook out was that we asked, of these four things, and we let them choose any combination of them. Of these four things, what would it be a real shame if we were to lose? 32% of respondents said the convenience of meeting on Zoom would be a shame to lose, and only that. They chose that as their sole answer. Another 32% chose Zoom and the YouTube aspect, that it would be a shame if we lost those two things paired together. So that already is 64% of respondents. 6% of folks said that just the YouTube part would be a shame if we lost. This little slice of very, very pale blue, 16%, they are sort of folks who kind of wanted to have both ways. Since we allowed them to sort of pick any combination, they picked convenience of meeting online, but they also picked, for example, meeting in person, the personal touch of meeting in person. They picked a sort of combinations that weren't necessarily easy to fit in one camp or the other. So I judge these 16% of folks as sort of wanting to have it both ways. As far as the ones that fell because of their choices squarely in the I want to meet in person and only in person forever camp, it's the small slices, the 14% of folks who, the biggest slice of that, the biggest tranche is 9% that felt that the main thing that would be a shame to lose is the personal touch of meeting in person. 3% felt that it would be a shame. It would be a shame if we had to fiddle with Zoom controls forever and ever. That they thought it would be a shame if they lost the ability to just speak without having to deal with unencumbered from Zoom controls. And then only and then 2% said that the personal touch and the Zoom controls. So this shows that, you know, it is a significant minority. It is a minority, a real minority of folks that seem to be saying to us, in person, in person, in person. I mean, I think this, and this was also a way of sort of asking the question again, which do you prefer, in person or online, without asking it in so many words. You know, that's the other question that I haven't yet put a chart together for was, if we had a viable hybrid option, would you use it? So I still need to put the data together for that. I haven't yet had the time to crunch the numbers for that. But the question did explain the challenges in creating a good hybrid option where one experience is not inferior to the other. And that's kind of what we're trying to achieve. In the office, for example, we might be able to achieve that, but it's not the hugest of spaces. So, you know, how many people from the public would be able to accommodate? So, and as much as the state seems to want to push us back to in-person meetings, unfortunately, there is not a concurrent push for funding and staffing and facilities and things like that. It's yet another, not to sound too Fox News-ish, but unfunded mandates and stuff like that. But yeah, so this is where we stand with this data. I found it really, really interesting. I think it really shows. I know, you know, at the beginning, people were like, "Oh, I don't know that I like this Zoom stuff. It seems really weird, and so it was too new." You know, I myself, I had never heard of Zoom before the pandemic, and now 2 years on, April is our 2-year anniversary being on Zoom. People like it. It's, you know, it seems like a modern entity should be able to assure this kinds of stuff. So that's where we are with that. I'll take any questions if there are any. All right, there don't seem to be. So yeah, we'll write this up in the newsletter, and you know, we'll go from there, and yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, and please keep this in mind as you evaluate for the hearing next month's exec, as you review this draft, taking into consideration all of this as well. Yeah, and thanks again to the board office for putting these together and sending them out and compiling them. Ask a lot of data-driven questions, and so compiling these are really, really important, and we can't do it without the board staff. So thank you, Jesus, and the rest of the team.
No problem.
Mm-hmm. All right, seeing no further questions, we'll now move on to our committee meetings in May. Feel free again, if you have anything pressing to report back to us, to do that. If you don't, feel free to waive the report. All right, so we'll start off with Environment and Parks.
Thanks, Kyle. This was the first one was requested by NYC Parks, and happy to give them an audience. The second community organization will probably be the Dag Hammarskjöld Park Friends of, just looking to confirm that. After the report from the Parks Department, This is to pick up on a previous exec meeting. The committee vice chair and I would like to start discussion about the plan of the community center and to work with other committees to do so, as Rich had nicely teed up in last month's meeting. And I don't want to be premature on this, but we just think that we just know that the committee, and I speak for Jeannie as well, really would love to put our teeth into planning for the community center.
Okay.
Everything else is a repeat from last agenda. On request for partnerships, Jesus, we are still interested in speaking with the land use attorney. Since the last exec meeting, progress on the Gramercy Park situation has included a research session with the city's finance department. And on committee vision, more open and safe outdoor public space in the district remains a top priority, but we want to look more at planning of other parts of the community's future, including the aforementioned community center. And that's it for me.
And yes, as a follow-up, that attorney we had been interacting with, in the end, it was not a good fit. And their advice was to go not with a land use attorney, to go with a property tax attorney. So okay, you and I can regroup on offline, and if we'll go from there. Anybody on the executive committee knows good property tax attorneys, don't keep them a secret, send them to Kevin and me by email, and we'll go from there.
Thank you for that.
And as far as DAG is concerned, when will that be finalized, if in fact it is to be the DAG Friends group?
I'm confident this week.
Okay.
All right, and that's it, Kevin? All right, so we'll move on to budget and governmental affairs.
I just wanted to add, sorry, Kyle, just on the, obviously any other committees that are interested in having the discussion about the community center, as Rich had mentioned, we'd be happy to cross committee this.
Yeah, I'm sure LV actually is probably interested in that. So if you want to connect with her offline.
Thank you, I will.
I will say, if I can advocate for a little bit, there should be facility space. If you guys can put in a community center, there should be board office space, board auditorium space, board meeting room space. This is something
I've already mentioned this to Kevin.
Yes. Kyle and I are clearly on the same page on that, and that will always be part of the discussions as long as I think, or Kyle is involved in those discussions.
Great. I would certainly make all these demands that the state is putting on us much easier.
With multimedia capabilities, I might add.
And it's what the public deserve.
Yeah.
They deserve no less from this government they pay so many dollars in taxes trying to support.
Agreed.
All right, so next up, budget and governmental affairs. Reshma.
Thank you, Kyle. So we're not going to have a May meeting because we didn't have any agenda topics. We have, all the different committee heads know, requested updates on the budget requests from each committee, and we're still awaiting more information from each committee person. And so hopefully in June, we'll have more information and we can have another meeting. And on the governmental affairs side, there are a few topics that we're looking at, but nothing that is urgent.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you very much, Reshma. All right, we'll go to transportation. Is Brian here? Hey, Brian. You might be on mute, Brian. All right, Brian might be having technical difficulties, so let's just go to the next one and we'll return back to that. Health and Human Services. I believe both LV and Anju are unable to make it today, correct?
I wasn't told if that was the case,
okay.
But do we see them here?
I don't see them.
Okay.
Okay.
And,
all All right, we'll move on to housing and homelessness. Rich?
Yes, so I'll be brief, and I won't take committee time to workshop the language here. I will follow up in the morning to the office, and I'll copy you, Kyle. But we had a good substantive meeting this 2 days ago, which was terrific. Everyone was engaged, both on the topics at hand and on the committee vision elements of the conversation. We've got 3 items active. One is, next week we will come together to discuss some sort of community meeting on the impact of rents and of landlord behavior on people in the community, and how tenant protections would impact that. Jesus, I'm going to follow up with you personally. Sandra Leftoff said that I should start with you, and we should use you as a sounding board and a resource in figuring out how to plan this. The context here is that the committee wants to be more of an evergreen tenant protection advocate and not just rubber stamp the legislation that comes out of the legislature that may or may not pass. So we want to do more than just endorse legislation that everyone has already endorsed. We want to actually be a voice for getting community feedback about the situation tenants are facing. So that's item 1. Item 2 is we're going to consider a resolution next month to support Councilmember Rivera's social housing bill package, which she mentioned in full board last week and introduced, I think, on Friday. And then the third is we have ongoing discussion of the budget requests, and there was a request from the members of our committee to that we should try to make them more precise in terms of what we're asking for, because a lot of our requests are general and are the sort that are easily waived off. And so, we're excuse me, we're going to look at the housing requests, the homelessness related requests, and the sort of special hybrid requests like restroom access, and try to formulate some more precise language. And we divided those up among committee members so that we can come back to next month's meeting and have a substantive conversation. I think that's the only other thing I'll mention is that we have an ongoing request in there for more supportive housing. We got supportive housing, over the last year. A couple of projects have come through, but there are a member of the community spoke in the meeting to respectfully ask us to look into how the supportive housing projects that we currently have are being operated and their impact on the community as part of our evaluation of this budget request, which I'm planning to do. I think that was a good faith request made by the community, and we should honor it. That's all I have.
All right. Thank you, Rich. Fantastic. All right. So move on to public safety. Matt?
Okay. So we'll start off with with an overview from the New York City Commission on Human Rights. So we had a pre-meeting with them earlier in the month. They have a lot of different presentations and a lot of different topics that they cover. So we figured we'd kind of start out with an overview, and then from there we'll probably get a little deeper into their work. But for the cybersecurity thing, we've still been having trouble getting a speaker for that. So we're kind of leaving the second item as tentative there, Joint Security Operations Center. So I know Brendan has reached out. It's difficult getting anybody to respond on that, but so we'll see where that lands. And of course, we have our meeting tomorrow night where we'll hear from the District Attorney's Office on the Small Business Alliance. I was in a meeting last week with them. Still a lot of shoplifting concerns impacting our local businesses. So that'll be the focus of tomorrow's conversation. So that's pretty much all I have, unless there's any questions.
All right, not seeing any. Thank you, Matt. All right, Sandy with land use and waterfront.
So this first item, Jim Collins actually recommended that we invite Dan Garodnick, but we don't have any specific questions. I think it's a little vague and I can't imagine that he'll come, to be honest. So I don't know that we'll do that. The Equitable Development Data Explorer is something that the city planning is putting together. So we'll have to make sure someone from city planning can actually make it to the meeting to explain that. It is something they've given us. They gave us a preview of it, but we don't actually have anyone, who's brought it up as an issue from city planning. The ESCR, if there's nothing to report, they don't want to come, and it is kind of a waste. So we'll see. That may be a little bit tentative. And one of the things I have been going to some of the other meetings that there was the East Coast, I forget what it's called, Jesus, but I actually joined it. And one of the things that they're talking about is the 421A. And whether, I guess some of the other community boards in the city are investigating it. And I wondered if there was any desire to look into that more. It is very complicated. So
The East Side Land Use Coalition.
Right,
Yeah.
the East Side Land Use Coalition. And that's Civitas, and they're looking into it. And it sort of brings home that it's an incredibly difficult, complicated issue. So I don't know if that's something we want to look at as a board. I know some other community boards are.
I'm up for it. If you and the committee are up for it, I have no problem with that.
Because it's and one of the things that Civitas is trying to do is get both sides.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of concerns if it ends, what happens.
Right.
So it is partly a housing issue as well. I don't know, Rich, if we want to try and amalgamate, find some good people to address it.
I would be interested. It's something that comes up periodically in our committee.
And
Okay.
it apparently it was not in the budget, the state budget, but it does come up.
Yeah.
The other thing, I go to the CAG meeting for the ESCR, and it's highly, highly focused on Project Area 1. So there's very little information that gets passed along for Project Area 2. And it's interesting because there's some really high demands that people are making about Project Area 1 that just have not been an issue for us. Maybe we need louder voices. I don't know. They're demanding a lot of things out of the project that we have not been. So maybe a good lesson. Anyway, that's sort of it. And we do have our meeting on Monday.
Okay.
So I don't really have a lot to report.
Oh, that was great. All right, and Rich, I'll actually the East Side Land Use Coalition because they hold like weekly meetings.
Okay.
I'm not able to attend them, so you can attend on behalf of the board. And then, yeah, Sandy, I agree with you with inviting Dan Garodnick. Unless we have something very specific to talk about, I don't want to waste that opportunity. I'm sure he would, just as a friend of Community Board 6, show up. But if we don't have anything substantive to talk about, I think that's a real waste of a request for him to appear. Yeah.
So can this fall off the agenda?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. And then this discussion on the Equitable Development Data Explorer, which has officially come out now, it's debuted. If we can secure a speaker, you would like a little demonstration, I guess?
Yes, and an explanation of how they think it's going to be used to develop community planning.
Okay, and assuming we cannot get a speaker, then this will be laid over for another month?
I think so, because it's meant to be a tool that the community can use. So without an explanation of it, it'll be not useful.
Okay. And then the ESCR update is looking pretty tentative. So some of these things may be tentative if in fact the Equity Development Data Explorer falls off, if in fact the ESCR ultimate, I guess you will let us know for sure whether they're coming or not.
Right.
Then cancel the meeting.
Well, we do have to discuss the budget issues. We never seem to do that, and it would be an excellent time to do it. So it would be fantastic to have a short meeting, but discuss those issues.
So should I put that on the agenda tentatively?
Sure. Then we know, then people can be prepared.
Okay. All right. We'll try and secure a speaker, and yeah, let us know. We'll wait word from you about whether ESCR will be on the agenda for May.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to youth and education. John?
Thank you. We did have our prior meeting where we passed a resolution related to the funding of 853 schools, which are private schools that are publicly funded. That continues to be an issue with the governor and the legislature, and we're going to keep following up on that. I've actually been working informally, sort of mentoring people on advocating on education issues in that regard, because I think they need a lot more visible advocacy. The agenda for May is actually the agenda you already saw for April, which we have pushed into May on buses in the district, which are a major issue, especially for kids with special needs. And I'm working to get the head of the citywide council on special education to be present at this meeting. What happened with the April agenda is we had two last minute opportunities, which I am very grateful to the board office for their patience regarding. One was a presentation from the executive director of the New York City Arts and Education Roundtable regarding funding for the arts in all our schools, which is a very important issue that got sidelined during the pandemic. And we will have a presentation from the executive director of that group this week. And then we have an emergency issue. As many of you know, we have two schools on 20th, between 19th and 20th streets between First and York. PS 40 and Salk School of Science. They're now down to one security guard for a 5-floor building with kids from literally, pre-K up until 8th grade. And it's a major issue, safety-wise and otherwise in the schools. So we're going to take that on in our April meeting as well. So we're grateful to the patience of the board office for allowing us to flip the agenda. As for our partnerships, the Community Board 5 is very eager to work with us, and we're talking to them about how to go forward on that in the fall. And the committee vision remains as it is. We want to find issues that are of importance to individual schools. As an example, what we'll be talking about in our April meeting on safety issues at PS 40 and Salk School of Science. And then issues that are frequently overlooked across the city of a broader nature, such as we did at the last meeting for special education kids. And this meeting will be doing for arts and education issues. I hope that was brief enough. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, John. All right, and I don't see any questions. So we'll move on to business affairs and licensing.
Hi. As you can see, the agenda in terms of who might be applying for a license is still information for May, but we plan to continue the open restaurants program. discussion in May. But other than that, I don't really have much to add to this agenda.
Alex asked me to remind you, there's some email that she sent you regarding the finalizing the upcoming bulk committee agenda. If you could get back to her on that. And there were some outstanding waiver requests.
Okay, I'll respond to the waiver requests, but I did respond to her about the visitors.
Wonderful.
Or people for this month, sorry.
Thank you.
And Claire, you email about the restaurant owner?
Yes.
All right, Sandy?
Yeah, the open restaurants, like we've kind of bounced that around between 3 committees and no one seems to want to vote on it. And I think it's kind of impossible to have, to vote in every committee. So I recommend that Business Affairs and Licensing Committee vote on it, and then we vote at full board.
Yeah.
It's just, it gets discussed and never resolved.
I am good with that.
I can talk to Anton, or I realize you're, but what does the rest of the board think? It just seems kind of.
So that's, Cindy, I'm on the same page as you. That's actually what I was going to suggest is I think this can come through business affairs. Not everything necessarily has to be a joint resolution because it ends up becoming joint when we vote on it at full board. That's really an opportunity. Obviously, all the other committees have been part of this conversation, whether it's been offline or attending the meetings themselves. So I think you can, have that conversation, and if it's if you're comfortable with the resolution, then pass it, vote on it, and then we can vote on it at full board. Yeah,
that works. Yeah, and so that might even happen like this month, and then we would not need to have it on the May agenda, because I guess actually if it is on the May agenda, it wouldn't be past full board because there's no June full board, or is there?
No, that's June 8th is the last time we can meet virtually. So if it doesn't pass at this one and it's on your May agenda, then the earliest that it could pass is at the June 8th meeting.
Okay. So we'll keep that there just in case. But
that's fine. Yeah, we can always remove them. And anything else, Claire, on that?
No, that's all from me.
Okay. And just want to check if Brian, were you able to fix your connectivity issues?
Yeah, sorry about that.
No worries, you're good. So we'll go back to the transportation. I know you're speaking on behalf of a chair and a vice chair, so.
I don't, especially because, I got something confusing in the mail from our chair about what's coming up. I was told that May is going to be rescheduled or something like that.
Yes, so the normal transportation committee happens on Eid al-Fitr, and so we let the chair know, and he said it was okay to reschedule. I don't know whether there are any committee members on that committee that observe that, and I don't know that we have a formal policy outlining like which committees, which particular holidays and festivals get precedence and don't have a meeting on that night.
Let me chase on this. Like, do we even need to have a meeting? Because we have like a report from the DOT that we get every month, and I don't think that there's any resolutions or anything that is new business that we need to urgently consider. So I thought that was how Jean had framed it, that we may not even have a meeting in May, but if the desire is to have a meeting, we can have a meeting.
If the chair is okay with not having a meeting, and if Kyle is okay with not having a meeting, then there doesn't have to be a meeting.
I agree. Yeah, as usual, I'll just remind everyone that there was a return to committee on one of the resolutions on the street co-naming process. So if that's something that wants to be pushed till June, if there's a June, if you want to have a June meeting, that's totally fine. Or if there's another discussion on it at May, that would be the time to do it. So that is something that's on the tentative agenda. So that could
Yeah,
be
tentatively.
yeah.
I'll get to that one in a second. So I think we'll have to proceed provisionally as if we will have a rescheduled meeting, but an email decision may be had to cancel the meeting, and not if that discussion is not ready for prime time. Because remember that that's something that requires gathering feedback. But in any case, I did want to give you a recap of what happened at our last meeting. I'm pulling up the agenda for that right now. We had our own discussion on Anton's open restaurants resolution. I don't think that we asked for it to come back to our committee at any point, or that there was any significant issue where we communicated that from a transportation perspective that we needed to see something different, or that we were dissatisfied with something. I just believe we had a normal conversation and just kind of went up and down the points and said what we thought was good about it and approve about it. So there would be, I guess, more details in the recap of that meeting, but we did not move business on that. We discussed a bus stop that was approved to full board. We discussed the co-naming process that advanced out of transportation unanimously, only to be voted for referral by transportation committee members in the full board. So that is something that will have to be considered the next discussion. And we had some status items come up again, but with no further action. Regarding the co-naming process, again, I was the one who was delegated to head up a task force on it. There was another member of the task force. I would like for Anne, the other member of the task force, to head this up going forward and collect any feedback that if there's going to be a resolution. There was a point that was repeatedly brought up that, because Michelle had come to both transportation and the full board, stating her opinion on this. And one of her points on this was that any mention of the action that was taken by the committee in 2020 was invalid because our bylaws didn't really empower the committee to vote in that kind of way on a board-wide moratorium, that the board still had obligation to act or the option to act on street co-naming applications, even if the committee was refusing to do so. And so there was a lot of back and forth about that, but in essence, the point that she was making was that that up-down vote in 2020 really didn't count for much. And if that holds up, and if that's the opinion of the executive committee, then we actually don't need to override it. There's no official thing that needs to be done for the transportation committee to start considering co-naming agenda items again. All that needs to happen is that the chair needs to accept them and put them on the agenda. And so that's something I'm putting out to you guys as food for thought in terms of, do we even really want to go through this process again if we have, if the opposition is on the basis that transportation shouldn't get to even say whether or not there should be a moratorium.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I don't think we need to delve into the committee business right now. We can leave that for that meeting for the committee to decide. But I know, Sandy, you were the chair at the time, overseeing it. What do you have any just brief thoughts on it when that vote was taken? Because I obviously wasn't in leadership at the time. Yeah.
And actually, there is a street co-naming resolution from 2018 that was, vetted and went through the committee at that time. And I went back and looked at the minutes, and what was happening was there was a discussion at Borough Board about moratoriums on street co-namings. And all we were doing was trying to find a position because the meeting was so soon after our meeting, give the chair a kind of reading from our committee. And so there was no resolution. It wasn't from the full board. And I don't even know if there was a moratorium from Borough Board. I have no idea. So I think it was a very loose, it was to give our chair just some feedback from the committee. So yeah,
Okay, good to know. I think Brian, if you or Jean, want to discuss that point at that meeting and figure out how best to move. I don't know if there's any improvements needed on the 2018 resolution or if it's fine as it is. If there are, obviously go ahead and do that. But just a reminder to all of the chairs at this point, if there's anything that you're voting on, even if it is a committee sort of preference of whatever it might be, workflow or dates or times, please take an official vote on it just so that we have that on the record, because you saw like semantics do matter in some of these conversations. But Sandra, go ahead.
Yeah. I was just going to add, I mean, I think this seems to be just a more of a case, not so much the straw poll vote. That straw poll doesn't change anything, but I guess this is kind of a tricky thing where there's two parts to this. One where sometimes a resolution, which is a policy statement on the board behalf, gets passed and time passes and people either forget about it or things kind of change in terms of intent. So yeah, it's fine that we adopt a new resolution. I think that Michelle's point was really that we had a policy and we just stopped following it, and she wanted us to follow the policy that we had originally adopted, which is a fair point. But of course, the committee can recommend modifications to it or revised policy based on the changing environment that has happened since 2018.
Yeah, no, and I think the further confusion was that the supposed new policy was that there was a moratorium because they voted on it by straw poll. So again, let's leave that for the Transportation Committee meeting. If there's any improvement needed on the 2018 version, please feel free to have that conversation in committee. And if you guys determine that there's none needed, that's also fine. And we can rehash the 2018 one and make sure that everyone is aware of what those procedures were determined at the time. Sandy?
I just want to say, I think Jean wrote the 2018 resolution. Okay. So I'm not sure, he's now the chair, but just one of those ironies of,
Is that the problem? Is that what you're saying?
No. I think he must feel it's pretty good if he wrote it.
Yeah. So we'll
So I just want to make it clear. I just want to ask for clarity though. Is it the chair's choice in this case, or does executive committee feel comfortable with the chair of transportation proceeding with considering these co-namings again if no official action is taken by the full board of CB6 or even the committee itself?
I'm confused with the question, Brian.
It sounds like Brian is asking, can the chair of a committee ignore the board policy? It sounds like that's the question. Is that what you're asking, Brian?
Well, the moratorium, is the moratorium board policy? I thought the moratorium was a straw poll.
Yeah, it's not board policy.
No. But what you're asking is what, that the chair should have latitude to discern when. I mean, in this case, the moratorium is not enforced by the actual board policy. That's correct. But I'm just saying, what is your question though, Brian?
So my question is the chair of a committee free to ignore a invalid policy?
Well, unless it's been ratified by the board, I don't see how it's a policy.
Yeah.
Well, it was supposedly approved by a straw poll by the committee that was
that's not
taken.
That's not the board.
Right, but
executive committee comfortable with the chair simply calendaring the applications again? If on what conditions would the executive committee be comfortable with these applications coming back. If we don't advance another resolution on this, if we just mothball what we wrote.
So, yeah, so
which
again,
we didn't even write. It's from
yeah.
another
So
another
that's- I mean,
community
that's-
board
yeah,
heavily
right. So
modified.
so that's the whole issue with this is that there was a straw poll. So I guess it was more of the way I was kind of interpreting it is very similar to like other committees sort of like determining their workflow, if it's something that they want on their agenda or not. Sometimes there are business affairs, applications that don't come under review because we are familiar with the applicant. There's no need for them to come in and take up time. Again, with this particular situation, community board approval isn't actually necessary for the street code namings, although obviously like anything, it's helpful. That is something that could have been done through city council directly. So again, this is kind of like a workflow thing. I don't think, again, we're kind of getting in the weeds here, so I don't want to wrap this up really quickly, but I think, no board chair or committee chair should be ignoring what their committee is supposed to be doing. But if they want to organize their workflow in such a way where either we waive response or comment, that's something that's fine. So I think the situation right now is that we're not viewing the moratorium as official committee policy. So if Jean and Phil and the rest of the committee would like to bring it back onto agenda items, that's completely up to the committee. If they want to waive response on some of these applications, that's also within their right as well, so that it wouldn't actually show up on it. But in terms of an official moratorium saying that we do not do this is a different thing, which doesn't technically exist.
So if the chair just takes another straw poll of the committee and the committee says, let's review these again, then executive committee is comfortable with us.
Well, first of all, I would like, let's get away from straw polls in general. I'm just like, that word is not toxic to me. But if essentially right now, there's no vote needed to say that they're going to see applications for street code namings, because we're now just recognizing that the straw poll didn't count. So it's as though we're working off the 2018 resolution that this is our process for street code namings. And very similarly, we're allowed to comment, we're allowed to waive, we're allowed to put them on the agenda. So that's, I think, business as normal.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I wanted to know. I wanted to know if we had any obligation to vote again, especially because we just advanced a resolution from the committee to approve a new set of rules. So
yeah, I mean, yeah, if you want to,
we clearly want the moratorium to end. So I think that Jean and Philip will proceed with some solution that does not require the resolution that was presented a week ago.
Okay, sounds good.
They'll get back to you on that, but I'll let them know the news.
Oh, thank you. No, I mean, it was a very confusing situation, especially since it was then we're trying to get a street code naming done at the end of the full board meeting. So it was a very confusing situation all around. So,
well, who was the name supposed to be on the street again?
Excuse me?
Who was the name was supposed to be on the street again? We should just vote for it now.
All right. Let's, all right. So we're now done with the committee reports. And if we'll now go to the old or new business. If any committee member has any old or new business, please raise your hand. All right.
Kyle, I'm sorry. Can I go back to transportation? Just one. Okay. So just to be clear, this agenda that is currently on the screen is tentative. Jean will very shortly tell us whether this is the agenda or whether the meeting is canceled, whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. There are no additional agenda items that Jean or Philip advanced to discuss. So that would either be the agenda for the proposed meeting, or Jean will make the call to meet in June when there's more agenda items.
Okay. And secondly, since you guys brought it up, because it relates to the office in a way, one of the things that Michelle was requesting from the board was, because on the transportation committee page, it does say there that there is a moratorium on street code namings. So what I'm hearing is there in fact is not a street code naming moratorium. Am I correct?
Correct.
I would just inform the co-chairs of transportation that knowledge that info is coming off the website, and ask them if they have any comment about that, based on our conversation that we had here tonight.
What seems like the conversation you guys just had is that there is not a moratorium.
Yes.
Well, Jesus, there's board policy.
There is
But-
no moratorium. If someone
Right.
wants to apply for a street co-naming, they can. Let's just have that.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yes.
we should remove it from the website.
Yes, and we'll inform Jean and Phil that that's the case. And if there's some change that needs to be taken at the next committee meeting, if Jean feels so inclined, that conversation can be had at that point. But as of now, we'll operate under the procedures of the 2018 one.
All right.
Yeah, I'll write them a memo on that. I'm all done. I don't have any more info.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, and so seeing no further business, the meeting is adjourned at 7:57 PM. Thank you, everybody. There's
Thank
still
you, guys.
Thank you
sunlight
all.
out.
Good
Still
seeing
sunlight
everyone.
out. It's not completely dark.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye, good night.